Hello and welcome once again to Superconnectivity. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is...
Phil, Philmy, and Parrish.
That's the man. Hey, Philip.
Charles.
I love living in a world where there are no bad Marvel properties on television, where we can all just wander blissfully knowing there never was.
Are you in?
Yes, the one I wish I was in. The inhumanity of it all.
Oh, the inhumanity.
Oh, the inhumanity. Kind of funny that like the 20s 9/11 has become a joke tagline for us in the future. Because you know the phrase, oh, the humanity. That people will always, oh, the humanity. It's remembering, what was effectively, the 9/11 of its day, which was a huge televised fiery disaster where countless people died or jumped to their deaths. This, of course, was the Hindenburg disaster. And as this reporter is watching it, he is just moved to tears, horrified by it, and he shouts, oh, the humanity. And now we think, isn't that a wacky catchphrase? Anytime we want to show how middling our problems are.
But I mean, once you get past the, how you get so many years between an event and, there's... And you get less and less people who are actually alive for it. It's just like, I guess you kind of have a disconnect where it's like...
Yeah, but what that tells you is that all that storied reference for 9/11, it will one day be, oh, the humanity.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be seeing, whenever they want to show that, just like, whenever they want to show, oh, it was a big explosion, they cut to that footage of the Bikini Atoll, test site. And, it's like, oh, towers come down. Wah, wah.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
One day it's going to be like Pearl Harbor. I mean, we're still sad about it, but, you weren't alive. I wasn't alive.
No. Yeah. But we don't have footage of it as a punchline. So plus, that's the good news for that.
Plus, I think it's kind of healthy that your mind doesn't swim in all this, sad stuff. You kind of find ways to get past it. But the one thing we can't get past is humans.
Yeah, but actually, moving away from Inhumans. But actually, speaking of 9/11, that was actually one of the things I was wondering about because of course, so current plotline to the Champions Avengers big crossover event is that essentially, all the tallest buildings in the world, sorry Sears Tower, have vibrating dangerously, about to collapse. And when they get to One World Trade, also known as the Freedom Tower in our universe, they have all the windows are shattering and all this stuff. And I was watching that and thinking, man, are they going to collapse One World Trade? Have we gotten to that point where they would actually do that in a comic book? They did not, though I wonder if the writers wanted to. That's always that interesting thing in comic books when you're dealing with buildings falling down all the time is, how do you deal with the sensitivity to the idea of buildings falling down all the time? Anyway, it's an interesting question. But not actually what I wanted to talk about this week, because what I wanted to talk about is another controversial issue that has been largely ignored in my mind. And it's one of these things where as we do all these analyses of pop culture and story and how they play in the larger context of our landscape and our real world lives, why has no one made an issue of the horse washing on BoJack Horseman? For those who don't know what I'm talking about, it is an ongoing thing in BoJack Horseman that they will have human actors dressed up as animals to play animal characters. So, for example, when they were doing the reboot of Horsing Around, and they had the two horse children, one of the horses, if I recall correctly, was an actual horse child actor. The other actor was a human actor in a horse head. And I found that fascinating, not just in the sense that okay, this is a real thing that happens where we do have people in our own world who are cast across race lines that, maybe people find controversial. What I found fascinating was that nobody found it controversial in the BoJack Horseman universe. There was no discussion, and they've had Hollywood folks and liberal and progressive and even conservative artists parodied and done on the show, but no one talks about this idea that they have human actors in horse roles. In fact, I believe Paul Giamatti played. I think they did a BoJack Horseman story and had Paul Giamatti playing BoJack Horseman. If I recall correctly, I know that they did a thing where BoJack wanted a role really bad, and they gave it to Paul Giamatti. And then he had I want to say it was Paul Giamatti. It might have been another famous great actor, but and then they had him in the horse head, which is the thing. It's always fascinating about the horse head is it's always got the face cut out in the middle, so you can see it's a human actor, but they're playing the horse character. So I find this fascinating that it is an on-the-nose thing they keep on doing in BoJack, but they have yet to mention it. It's like, to tie it into other things, it's like the open secret of Harvey Weinstein. Now, of course, we've been telling jokes about the sexual predations of Harvey Weinstein for decades. For what it's worth, we've been telling jokes about the sexual predation of both Woody Allen and Roman Polanski, too. The difference was that Roman Polanski and Woody Allen both suffered career-wise for their sexual predations, if you will. Roman Polanski had to flee the country. Woody Allen doesn't make as many movies as he'd like to, and is no longer the lovable goof where he can make other people's movies now. I don't know the last time Woody Allen was cast in someone else's movie. I think Sing Sing Along was maybe the last time, which was just before the whole Sunini incident. He's with Bette Midler in that one. And I may be misremembering the name. But yeah, Woody Allen doesn't get cast in other people's films. He still gets to make films because he is still, for what it's worth, by some accounts, a decent filmmaker. And honestly, what Woody Allen did is much less overt than what Harvey Weinstein is accused of doing. Woody Allen, basically, you had the Sunni thing, which is out in the open, but was fully consensual, if creepy. Then there is another issue as to whether or not there was some sexual impropriety with one of Mia Farrow's other children. But we don't have much backup on that story aside from the victim's statements, which, are not to be discounted, but also hard to put into context. This is what you always have with these things, when you have these big issues, if it's easy to see Woody Allen as a creep. But if there is not a strong case of evidence, like it was like Harvey Weinstein, the issue there was just that his wealth and power protected him.
Yes.
His position, because no one wanted to cross him because he was rich and powerful.
And he could make careers.
Which is sad.
Yeah.
Well, he can make and break careers, and that is sad that someone was that way. And I wish he was not. I wish the industry was not that way. But it is, unfortunately, the way the industry has been at times.
I believe the Woody Allen stuff, and I believe the Roman Polanski stuff, but in those cases, you can almost kind of say, well, it's he said, she said. I mean, Harvey Weinstein's in Bill Cosby territory. I mean, what is it now, 30-something?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and Bill Cosby's another one where, again, because it came out, he has suffered. Mm-hmm. And Bill Cosby was never the open joke. I mean, people knew about it, and there were jokes made about it, but it was not as open as it was with Weinstein. Weinstein is a unique case where everyone was, he's such a, you know what it is? I'll tell you, it is, how much of it was because he was so fat. Because he is a very fat guy. And I think sometimes when you're a fat guy, it's so ridiculous that you're a sexual predator, I guess, to some people, because because clearly no one is being with you because of your sexual magnetism. So, and to give you an example, of another conservative who has had a lot of accusations put against them, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger, if you remember the Gropinator stories, where he was always, like our president, grabbing women on set by various parts of their bodies. Though, amazing that hasn't come back to bite him. But again, it's partially probably because he is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And there were enough people for whom it was consensual that it makes the people for whom it was not consensual not so much less believable, but I don't even know how to describe it. It's a set of, honestly, it's a whole messed up thing, the way this all is. And I don't know exactly how to dig into it, except to say, basically, stop grabbing women if they don't want to be grabbed, and stop using your position of power to sexually harass people. Okay, can we all just agree to do that? Now, I know as a world famous podcaster, I could be using this power to have my way with countless people. Well, countless in that it's zero, but still countless. I don't, because I understand that. First off, what's always controversial to me about the idea of forcing yourself on someone is it's not like, especially if you're rich, it's not like consensual sex is that hard to get.
Exactly.
I mean, if nothing else, you're going to pay a lot less in lawsuits by just going to a professional on the subject.
I think,
I mean, and not for nothing, there are people that get paid to, I'm sorry, okay, we're getting a little crazy here. I don't know.
What?
I got a warning there.
But no, I mean,
I think it's just my wife telling me she don't want anything else.
Oh, I think the thing with like sexual harassment and rape and stuff, it's like they always say it's not about not completely about sex. It's these guys have like this sickness where they have to lord their power over someone and like dominate them. It's
Yeah, well, and that is the truth of it, and that's why the sexual addict argument is so false, because it's not about sex; it is about power. Mm-hmm. And this is why you're getting more and more male actors who are coming forth and saying, you know what? Yeah, I was in this situation too. It maybe wasn't in quite the same way, but yeah, I was harassed and physically touched without my permission by people who had the power over my career. And it's horrible to think about stuff like that. And it's hard to know where to go, except to say, well, maybe we should just stop doing. Maybe we should just stop harassing people. Maybe we should actually be polite to people and think about other people in the same way we think about ourselves. And would we want someone to do this?
I saw the funniest line on Twitter this week. It said, guys, before you say something to a woman, think, whatever you're saying to this woman, I'm kind of dragging it out, but guys, before you say something to a woman, think about, would you want another guy to say this to you in prison? If not, don't say it to the woman.
Yeah, fair enough. Yes. Although I was thinking, the basic problem with anything, with people like you want to be treated is like, I'm sure Harvey Weinstein would like to have Scarlett Johansson ask him on a date. It's like, but that misses the point, which is the problem, is that people
it's
intentionally miss the point.
Yeah, but it's far beyond asking for dates.
I know.
Wasn't there reports he wanted women to watch him shower? It's like,
he wants, it's your basic, but it is your basic power dynamic issue, is what it is. It is the power dynamic. It is the predator in chief quality of it. When thinking I can get away with it. And here's the thing: what keeps you from committing a crime is the question, can I get away with it? You're missing the point of why it's a crime. It's not, it's like, I don't rob banks, not just because I'm afraid I'll get caught. I mean, that's a very big reason I don't rob banks. Don't get me wrong. But the fact of the matter is I do understand that stealing from other people is wrong.
Well, you hit on a good point. If you're about to do something and the thought flashes in your head, am I going to get caught? It's probably what you're doing is probably wrong. If you have the thought
exactly
to get caught, yes.
Yes. If the entire argument is I think I can get away with it, don't do it, you know. You know, yeah. It's, you know, there is no defense for this situation we're in with these people. The one saving grace I will ever say is that at least these guys eventually are getting held accountable. And yes, there are dozens more who are not, but at least Harvey Weinstein isn't getting elected president. At least Bill Cosby will not be elected president. And you know what? And you can say what you will about Bill Clinton, but up until there were not really stories of non-consensual issues with Bill Clinton, and even those have still been very rare. Most of what you've gotten about Bill Clinton was that he's a lech, and as a lech myself, I endorse consensual lechery between consenting adults. You know, I think that if you're a guy who can talk a girl into going back somewhere with you to have fun, and she wants to have fun the whole time, and you're a woman that likes to have fun, I think no shame in your game. That's my motto. If you get to a point where what you want and what you do crosses a line and people aren't comfortable and people don't feel like they can leave, then you've got a problem, you know. That's my take on it, and I think that there are people that want to, for political reasons, see everyone's just as bad, except everyone isn't getting elected president, and everyone isn't. It's not like Bill Cosby opened up his act. It's like, so I was drugging women last night. You ever notice how when you slip a woman some Sudafed in her wine, she gets all like, that's not how he opened his act. That wasn't how he presented himself. Now, it may have been stuff that people knew about. Maybe people kept quiet, but I sure as heck didn't know about that till it came out. I mean, even freaking Eddie Murphy, who does a whole bit about how him and Bill Cosby had a back and forth, he did not even call it out. Now, granted, Eddie Murphy was probably doing some of that stuff too, because Eddie Murphy, though again, with Eddie Murphy, I think most of it was that he's a lech, but I think his lechery was mostly consensual. He was kind of a deadbeat with Scary Spice. Had to get the courts involved to get him to man up on that issue. But, prior to him being a deadbeat, he was just a lech, and it was a consensual bit of lechery. So, there's all these levels to human sexual dynamics. It's a family podcast, right?
Yes.
We're gonna throw up the PG label on this. I don't think we've said anything too horrible yet.
No, I don't think so.
Interesting thing, we were talking the other day with the Peter David, who is such a delightful character. He has kids, and I think he said he has grandkids now. And man, I gotta say, that's got to be a great granddad.
Oh, the stories he could tell.
Oh yeah. About not Seth MacFarlane, Todd McFarlane just drawing a tongue. That's what he did. But for what it's worth, one can make the argument that the tongue is what makes venom. That yes, the story makes venom, and this is the constant argument between the writers and the artists. This goes all the way back to Lee and Kirby. How much of it is the story I'm writing, and how much of it is the visualizations you're giving those stories. And this has always been the thing with, the problem with Lee and all the gang back in the day was Lee was a writer. and he was more than happy to promote his own self. Lee, because writers are talkers, as you'll notice. I do fancy myself a writer, and I am a talker. And the thing is that, yes, I talk. And you're always telling people about all your great ideas and all these things, and you do want to put that out there. But because comic books are a collaborative thing, and artists are drawers, not necessarily talkers, they have a harder time snatching the spotlight back. So you actually need a super magnanimous writer to turn the light on the artists to say, and here are all the artists who make it possible. Mm-hmm. And to me, I always felt Stan Lee did that in the soapbox when I read it, where he was always talking up everybody else's talents, always calling, the stupendous, Jack the King Kirby. I don't think Jack was the King Kirby until Stan Lee said it, I think Stan Lee's the guy who gave everyone those nicknames. And Stan Lee was the guy who said, hey, know that this guy, Jack Kirby, is important,
Yeah. I mean, I don't think artists get enough credit, but I mean, they are integral to the process because, like Peter David said last night, go check out that interview. His second Captain Marvel series, he says he created that script because, hey, that's going to fit Criss Cross's Sal. Criss Cross left after 6-7 issues, and he's like, another artist came in, and it's like, this, the story doesn't make as much sense. It's not working as well as when he, as the story that he wrote for this specific artist.
Yes. Although you do realize there was kind of a slight at Criss Cross.
Yes, I know.
As well.
I know. Well, he was trying to work with his strengths,
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It was, but it was an interesting take, and it was, but that's the thing. And actually, I was making this point out because I was listening to the Jones cast because we're like so far, and I think the Devil is coming up even before we get. I think by the time we might get the Punisher before we get the Don't Get Defensive podcast. I don't know. I know Rob has a plan. I'm not questioning his plan, but we just finished Jessica Jones, so I don't know if we're going to go right into Defenders but he was asking me for like the Devil which is our Daredevil rewatch podcast. If he's going to do that before we get to Defenders. I don't question the man. I'm just saying.
Oh, but you mentioned the Punisher. Did you see they announced the release date for the Punisher? Did you see what the date was?
April 15th.
No, it's November. It's the day Justice League hits theaters.
Oh.
So everyone's like, oh, the Marvel DC rivalry is back in full force, and
I think you can watch 2 shows in a day.
Well, one's a movie at the theater. I mean, you go to the theater, watch Justice League, and come home and watch Punisher.
Well, I mean, arguably, you make the point that, especially if people are soft on Justice League, which I don't know. I don't know if people are soft on Justice League. I don't know where they're sitting on Justice League just yet. I mean, for me, I think coming off of Wonder Woman, you've got some good buzz for Justice League. I think somehow the Batman stuff is just really hurting them. I don't know why they're publicizing that stuff. It's like, you should be just like, first off, here's what they should have done. They should have said, Affleck's working on this script, man, and we want him to have that best script ever. And we all know Affleck would never finish that script. That would have been freaking Ant-Man territory. And we never have to make this Batman film, at least not for a couple more years until we finally get frustrated and make the Batman film. Mm-hmm. Okay? We could have kept on using Batfleck, because I don't think Batfleck was a bad Batman. Mm-hmm. I've never felt it was a bad Batman. I think, well, as I always say, I think Ben Affleck gets flack because he gets cast in things with writers that aren't doing him any services in their writing. So like, oh, that was an awful Batman you did, Ben Affleck, and it's like, well, no, I did the Batman, and that was the script. I'm not in control of the script, but I think I did a good Batman. I think he did do a good Batman. I think he got just the right balance between somber brooding and handsome Bruce Wayne.
He was he was sabotaged. Why'd you say that name?
Don't even.
Because that's my mom's name, dummy.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but like, is that like the only person he's ever met named Martha?
Exactly.
You just gotta wonder, like the Joker says, "Please don't let them hurt Martha." So, why'd you say that name? You remember? There's this thing in the Pirates of Penzance. Great musical, fantastic film. You should watch it. Everyone should. And in it, so the plotline is that this young man who's a noble young man, but he was apprenticed to pirates instead of pilots, ship's pilots. But he was made to an apprenticeship to the Pirates of Penzance, who are the most dread pirates in all the land, except they have a hard and fast rule: they do not harm orphans, because all the Pirates of Penzance themselves were orphans, and it would be cruel for them to harm other orphans. Word of this got out. As it turns out, now the entire Royal Navy seemingly is completely manned by orphans, because every time they take a ship, they're told, "Oh, we're all orphans, sir." And they say, "Well, I guess you all have to go." They take the treasure, but all the boatswains get to go home. And the obvious point of the whole thing is that giving Batman some stupid thing like that, it's just like it gives it okay, because for all we know, Superman uses super hearing and supervision. First off, it's like the second Superman meets Batman, he can do X-ray vision off the mess. Oh, hi, Bruce. Then he immediately knows his mom's name is Martha, and he can just throw it out. Probably should have said, "Hey, we got a lot in common. My mom's named Martha too," and then they could have gone and played catch. Like all superhero like all things, if anyone ever stopped to talk about stuff, it would have been better. Much like in this episode of Squirrel Girl, which may come back to bite Squirrel Girl in the butt, because basically what they do, and this is interesting, they reset Ultron because there's like a bit of Ultron that got loose in the Savage Land and all this kind of stuff, and they write some malware that resets him to his factory default settings, I guess. And they basically make the point was the problem with Ultron was he just wasn't raised right. So she gives Ultron to her mom, who takes him to Canada.
Aww.
And she plants Ultron in her garden to give him a loving, caring environment to grow in. I want to see what loving, caring tree Ultron is. I want that Ultron to come up and to see if any superheroes actually will accept him as a decent Ultron, because decent Ultrons are not unheard of. There was a previous Ultron that was created. I want to say it was Ultron 7.
I thought it was
or was it Ultron 5?
Oh, I thought it was 12. I don't know.
Oh, I don't know which one it was. It was during the West Coast Avengers. Basically, an Ultron came online before the actual Ultron had actually died.
Mm-hmm.
And so that Ultron didn't get the full download, and he just knew he was Ultron and knew about Hank Pym, and he was like, "I don't want to take over the world. That seems like a really bad use of my time." And he basically calls up Hank Pym and like, "Hey, we just settle this, Dad, because I'm an AI, and I'm just wondering, do I need to be an evil AI? And so I would love to see this. I would love to see that Ultron come back, and I'd love to see, first off, how he interacts with the other Ultrons, and more importantly, how he interacts with the human population. Because, again, we saw from the Avengers Hank Pym Ultron hybrid that clearly humans don't like to give Ultrons a break. And granted, there's probably good reasons for that, but still it makes you wonder. I don't know.
The man keeping Ultrons down.
Yeah, all an Ultron wants. Man, so many things to talk about. One thing, this was actually a thing I wanted to mention about, because again, with Peter David, I'm going to plug this a lot, even though it's probably already aired, so I don't know why we're plugging it, but go back and listen if you missed it.
That's right.
It was worth it. But he makes this point about how all he just did a tweet for the Orville. Saying, I like the Orville. I'd love to write a novel of that. And everyone, and of course, the internet blew up and said, "We want you to write an Orville." I was trying to call him the godfather of the Orville with Strike Zone, and we didn't really get into that because he kind of took it in his own way. But that's okay. I really do think that Strike Zone was one of these books that kind of re-centered how we thought about Trek, and really suggested that these are human characters on the Starship Enterprise, much in the way they were in the original series. Kirk was a lech, but that's okay because he was still a good captain, even though he was a lech. Scotty's a drunk, but he's still a great engineer, even though he's a drunk. And you compare that to what we see on the current Orville, where yes, the helmsman is a drunk, but he's still a dang fine helmsman. And, the captain clearly is the exact opposite of the other captains in that he has got a lot of self-doubt instead of being constantly self-assured. But he actually still uses that to be a good captain. So it's a good series. And I do think that kind of idea kind of stems from, not just his novels, but I think a lot of the Trek novels had to deal with that. But I do think that Strike Zone was a real strong entry in that category. And I do think that was one of the things that he made a good story with. But that's okay. I wanted to talk to him for an hour about that. It wound up being just a very small part of it, but we still talked for an hour and 20 minutes. So
that's right.
That was worth it. Anyway, but speaking of how Twitter blows up at things, so Hallie Outwell recently tweeted having a lovely time in Georgia. And it blew up into this whole thing of, she's shooting something. Now, there apparently was a tweet of her with like little dots on her face as well, which they point out that's what they do when they do that age-altering CGI, which makes me think, as we've all pretty much assumed, she's going to be in Captain Marvel. And that is going to be awesome. I hope she has a big part in Captain Marvel. I hope it's just not like, I hope it's not like it was in Ant-Man where it's just a couple of scenes. I really want her to be the mentor to Captain Marvel. I really want to have that story be as much a Peggy Carter film as it is a Captain Marvel.
They've been writing. Carol Danvers is like a military officer, and that'd be awesome if like her superior officer or even her mentor was Peggy Carter. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I really want to see is I want to see young Thunderbolt Ross as her direct commander. Oh, who will they get for young Thunderbolt Ross? That's a good question. Ben Affleck. Let's get Ben Affleck in a mustache. That'll do it. Have that young Thunderbolt Ross and have him be kind of this, kind of a J. Jonah Jameson kind of character, not really trusting of superhumans, and have sort of having Carol Danvers as his prize military intelligence analyst, and have her there, really busting up, and then sort of have Peggy Carter come in as the SHIELD representative, sort of, pulling rank on Ross, and having Ross be like, no, you are not a U.S. government organization. You are a freaking pan-national group, and we will not be subject to you. This is the United States of America. And have sort of Carol in the middle of it, because on one hand, she dang well agrees with, Peggy Carter doesn't just get to come in here and start bossing people around. Mm-hmm. But then when she does develop superpowers, it becomes this issue of, how do we handle this? I think that's why she goes to outer space, because I think that's going to be how they end it. Is they realize she's too dang powerful, so that SHIELD can't contain her. The military doesn't trust her, because you're gonna have this neat scene then maybe with Ross as like her advocate, even, that you need to serve your country, young lady. You need to be the Captain Marvel we need. You need to be on those front lines, protecting our boys in Vietnam or wherever we can finally smash those commies or what have you. But then find out that he's also developing all the anti-Marvel weaponry just in case, Mm-hmm. And and then she is trying to figure out, and then of course you have a night scene with her and Peggy at the end where it's like, where Peggy says, what, maybe you should just go somewhere. It's like, well, where would I go? It says, the stars, you can go there now. No one's going to stop you. No one's going to say you can't be an astronaut, lady. You go up there. You go to the moon. See how those Inhumans are doing. Because, of course, Peggy knows about the Inhumans.
Doesn't want to know, but she knows.
Of course she knows. She knows everything. Peggy Carter knows everything. Peggy Carter's got more skeletons in her closet than Amanda Waller.
Oh, that would be so. That would be funny though. All the Inhumans think they've been hiding all this time, and they're Shield's like, oh no, we've known about you for decades.
Yeah, well, especially again, like I say, if they exiled Medusa's parents and one of them winds up working at NASA, Peggy's going to be like, "Funny thing, Mister Dusa, you have no birth certificate or social security card, and not for nothing, you also clearly have superpowers."
Oh, the Inhumanity.
Yeah, no, well, if anything could save Inhumans, it's Hallie Outwell.
Mm-hmm.
Just need to de-Buckeyes it, So that's that. Anything else is worth talking about this day, Philip?
I can't think of anything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I guess that's our super connections for this week. One other thing I wanted to mention, which I mentioned during the marathon, I don't think we've really discussed it much, is, and again, these things, interesting to me, that there are these things that get so obsessed about in pop culture, and there's a really obvious point that gets made that no one wants to talk about. With BoJack Horseman, it's actors in horse face. Actors playing roles that are clearly for a different species, but everyone just accepts it, I mean, maybe it's because it's not as controversial because it's not like they're doing minstrel depictions of horses. But on some level, isn't it always a minstrel depiction when you're not a horse yourself and are making these statements? And when BoJack Horseman makes a joke about what it's like to be a horse, it's different than when, Paul Giamatti does it. But along those same lines, there is this thing that no one that I've seen has made a mention of, and that is Fly Fisherman Rick. At the end of the final season, the final episode, hopefully not the final season, but the final episode of this season's Rick and Morty, where at the end of it, after with this world's government, he shows up in the president's office as Fly Fisherman Rick. He's got like the little fly fisherman jacket and the fly fisherman hat. Comes in and says, "Hey, Mr. President, I'm Fly Fisherman Rick. I'm one of the many Ricks that exist in the infinite universe. We're all pretty much the same, but you can always denote me by my fly fisherman's hat. New Rick, new Morty, whole new adventures. I'm here if you need me." And then he goes back to Beth and Jerry's house, and first off he says, "Thanks for letting me borrow your dumb hat, Jerry." It's basically revealing that this is the actual. I know you've never seen any of these things, Phil. That's okay. Basically showing that he is actually the real Rick that we've been dealing with for all these years. But what's interesting about this is just the fact that, yes, he is that Rick, but he's also a Rick that for all of his complaints about how meaningless everyone is, how little anyone matters, they actually all matter a lot to him. And I think what the actual point of it is that because Rick is old, Rick is facing mortality. And we make the point in this that he can't just clone a new body. Because when he cloned a younger self of himself earlier and put himself in a teenage Rick, he was in pain and anguish because it wasn't really him. And putting his spirit in another body didn't feel right. He's not Tony Stark. He can't just do that. And so recognizing that his death is inevitable in this meaningless universe means that he has to find a meaning for himself. And what that meaning is, what simple Rick understood was that the only meaning is family. That's the only thing that we as organic life forms can create that has any value, because it's the only thing that we create that actually continues on past us. Now, granted, you can say that art and science do all that too, except only if there are organic things to appreciate it. All the knowledge in the universe in a book that's never read is worthless. The greatest painting ever painted on a wall that no one sees is worthless. So the actual conveying that knowledge, that emotion, that art to another generation, that is what makes human life of value. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have kids. It just means that there has to be other humans to appreciate what you're creating. So you can create this and say, hey, you humans, look at this thing I created. You go, yes, now go tell your kids I'm cool. Thank you. That's all I wanted. Now I can continue on as well. I don't actually have to have kids to create great things that'll carry on, but without something created, all of that knowledge and artistry means nothing. And so what you're actually seeing in that last episode, when he chooses to become Fly Fisherman Rick, chooses to humiliate himself and accept that all of his vaunted genius does nothing, is meaningless without someone important in his life, that he would rather be the Jerry of the family than be a Rick alone. And that's the amazing final episode of Rick and Morty. No freaking evil Mortys, no machinations at the Citadel, just what it means to be a Rick and what it means to be happy. And that we want to try to be happy, and the only way we're going to be happy is if we have human connections. Again, it's not even about family in the larger sense of human connection and that person who gives your life. So that is how I saw the end of Rick and Morty, and no one else is talking about it. I feel like when I saw the last episode of The Sopranos, and I said, oh, the reason why it ended that way is because that was when the film stopped. They just ran out of film. Because the first scene of that second arc of that season, it's called Soprano Home Movies, and they have a scene where they're watching someone walking around, and then it just the whole movie runs out of film. It goes film. So you don't see how that scene ends, and that was the telegraph for that final season. That's what it is. Does he die? Yeah, eventually he dies. Eventually something happens. Probably gets killed because he's a mobster, or he lives a long life, or he goes to jail, or something happens. But it doesn't matter because we ran out of film, so you don't get to see that. That was the end of The Sopranos. No one talked about that. That was the end of Rick and Morty. No one talked about that. In the middle of BoJack Horseman, horse-faced people, the horse-washing of Hollywood society, why is no one discussing it? Just me, lone voice in the wilderness, Charlie the Professor Esser, and that is our Super Connections for this week. Phil, where can folks find you?
Wow, if you want to discuss the greatness of Charlie Esser, you can email me, nightwingpdp@gmail.com, and on Twitter, I am at nightwingpdp, and especially if you want to do an interview for Capes and Lunatics, get a hold of me.
And what's that phone number,
The
Phil?
voicemail is 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. If you want to share your thoughts on BoJack Horseman or Rick and Morty with Charlie Esser, call us up. Let us know.
Please do, because Lilith didn't show today, so I had no one to talk BoJack with. Okay. And, of course, if you'd like to write to me in that old-fashioned email way, go right to the source for all your BoJack Horseman needs. Write to me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet the Inhumans and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. when it comes back, and Gotham, which is great. And Legends of Tomorrow, which I don't live tweet so much, but is still enjoyable. At Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEsser. Look for the two E's right there in the middle for the quality. Thank you for connecting with us this week. Super connect with us once again. Everybody dance. Outro music.
The Inhumanity. We got fucked. Iron Fisted.
That's right, their name. They're Inhumans. Of course they're jerks. They're inhuman.
Iron Fisted Inhuman.
They're just mean to people.
We got double bucked.
Yeah, we got double bucked.